What's up guys, I'm Laxya and as promised, here's my tutorial for the hold on remake I did probably last week and a lot of you guys requested for it. It sounds like this. So if you want to download the FLP, it's down in the description. But more importantly are the things of how and why I did certain things to achieve the sounds as the original song. So let's dive right into the project right now.
Let's start with the break, which sounds like this. So the break is made of these elements, a Kashmir impact to transition into the break, a piano melody, a string drone, and some beautiful pads. The main element here is the piano, which plays the melody. If you hear the original song, the piano is very bright, so I recreated the sound in FL keys since I wanted to use only a stock plugin. So if you look at the patch, I changed some of the parameters in the grand piano preset to make the piano a bit brighter. Moving on to the processing, this is how the piano sounds without any effects. Let me show you the effects one by one. There is some camel crusher to compress the piano, some reverb to give it space, and some delay to give it space and to fill in the gaps. The main effect here is the EQ, which has a crazy high shelf on it. It makes the piano super bright and in your face. I don't recommend doing this, but in my case I had the reference track, so that is what I did to achieve the sound. Moving on to the strings, which sounds like this. It has Panomatic to make it stutter a bit, some reverb for spacing, stereo enhancer to make it wide sounding since the piano is in the middle, and there is a kickstart which will be turned on in the drop. For the MIDI, it is one sustained note which stops every 2 bars, which I found interesting in the original track. Next up the pads, there are 4 layers to it which sound like this. And the processing is pretty standard. It's how you would process pads, some EQing, reverb, stereo enhancing. These pads really give the break the ambience that it needs, and this halfway layer adds more energy to the track. About the drums, it has a boomy kick, 1 snare, 1 clap, which I routed to the same track since there was an automation which slowly brings the drums in. Sounds like this. And the drums continue transitioning into a snare buildup with a unique rhythm as the original track. Next in the build-up, the pads continue with the first chord of the chord pattern. And I made a standard build-up riser in silent, which does a good job in raising the energy. Some downlifters and risers. And this is the interesting part. Before the drop hits the floor, I am taking away the energy so that it hits harder. This is the drum high pass automation. In the second one, I am lowering the overall track volume just before the drop. This one, I am making the track mono to make the drop hit wider, and high passing the whole track before the drop. That's it for the build up. Now coming to the elephant in the project, the drop, it sounds like this. Let's start with the hot leads. So it has 6 layers all made in silent, and this is how they sound individually. Notice how each of them has minimal processing on them because the patches sound good right out of the synths. Just some EQing, a peak controller which is controlling the fader of the reverb bus to duck the reverb when the dry leads are playing so that it's not messy and comes through. Now on the lead bus, what I did was I compressed them together so that they mesh better and sound as one big sound. Some EQing, removing some of the resonant frequencies, and some sidechain to let the kick come through better. Now on the reverb bus, I have the Valhalla room, but if you don't have it, I did keep a fruity reverb too, and I made it sound almost similar if not the same, so don't worry if you don't have a Valhalla room. And I cut off the low end so that it doesn't muddy up the low end of the track. Some kickstart to duck the reverb when the kick hits. Now the interesting thing here is you can see that I routed the lead bus to another track and I routed the reverb to the same track. Now why did I do this? Was to compress the leads and the reverb together, which combines and mashes them together. This really makes the lead sound even more huge and just uplifts the sound. Some EQing and some sidechain again to let it pump a little more. So far so good. If you have any questions, you can drop them down in the comments. I'll be happy to help you out. Oh, I almost missed this. This is my favorite part of the track. This ear candy lead which sounds so good. Have a listen. Sounds amazing, right? Also, it has a panning automation as the original track. Next up is a pretty standard progressive kick which sounds like this. And the sub beneath sounds like this. Very powerful sub because of the processing. One EQ to cut out the highs because you don't need them in the sub bass. And I used a camel crusher to compress it so that the energy remains the same. And a harder sidechain to make it pump. So together the kick and the sub sounds like this. Moving to the bass, it has 3 layers which sound like this. You can even add another layer which is more gritty to add harmonics. Together the sub and the bass sound like this. Next up are the chords. It has 2 layers to it. One is the piano layer and the other is the saw chord layer. In the piano layer we have both these piano sounds from the FL Keys plugin, so everyone can use it, and both of these pianos sound different to each other. Some standard EQing, stereo enhancing and sidechaining. The track didn't need any more processing, that is why there is less of it. Moving on to the saw chords. Notice how each layer sounds different, and processing them together, some stereo enhancing, making space for the leads, reverb for space, and sidechain for the pumping. Together they sound like this. Now for the atmosphere, I have the strings in the back from Citrus to fill up the space. Very low in volume but adds up to the ambience. Now for the drums and the effects, it sounds like this. It's pretty standard progressive style elements which I'll just run through. That's pretty much it guys for the elements. Now to show you how I mastered the track, let's check out my mastering chain. There's nothing on it, but not really. That's because I do all my mastering in my pre-master track. Oh, and by the way, let me know if you guys want this template. I can drop it in my next video if you want it. It just helps me so much, makes everything organized. It's just faster to work with and jot down ideas, so let me know. So about the mastering, the first thing I do is I do a low and high cut at 20 Hz and 20,000 Hz because you don't need frequencies out of that range. This EQ is for the automation purposes. Next is the compression. I did it in the FabFilter Pro MB, which is an amazing plugin. So just compressing each band a little bit to reduce the dynamics and glue everything. In case you don't have this plugin, I have put a Maximus for you, which is essentially doing the same thing, so you can use that. For the limiting, I have used the invisible limiter, but if you don't have it, not to worry, there's a fruity limiter which is doing the same thing. And that is all for this project guys.
So thanks for watching guys, drop me a like if you like the video, and yeah, I want suggestions on what to make my next video on, so make sure to drop them down in the comments below and push that red button if you haven't already. See you in the next one, have a good one.